Hello, I'm just waiting for see if a few more of our regulars pop in and before I really get chatting, so I don't have to immediately repeat myself. But yeah, this is my writing process, and we've done different writing exercises before that were drawing exercises, but this is more showing formally like what I do to make a comic, and what I've been working on recently is a lot of short stories. You know, my goal is to put out more pages next year than I did last year. I'm trying to get a jump on it. And, when I'm at this stage, I really am just trying to get the idea down. And when I see the story or the page, there's one of the things I talk about is there's not a lot of room on the page. Um, there's not a lot of as much real estate as people tend to think that there is. It's true that you can do all kinds of tricks where you are, in fact, moving time, changing scenes, or whatever. I very rarely change scenes on a single page unless it's some sort of a montage or a storytelling device. But well, it's also because I like to reward the page turn. You turn the page, there's something new. Um, but yeah, I guess I'll start at the beginning. Um, this is a short story that I've been working on. And these are the prelims. This is the writing. This is the rough draft of the story before I do the large pages, of course. And what I will do when I first get started is I'll just write like this, where this is basically an outline of the whole story. Sometimes there's little bits of dialogue. It's wherever the ideas come together. And then, I'll do some character sketches. I'll just think of some ideas. I'll come up with names. And then, I will take that first piece of story right here, and then I will immediately go into the first page. And, sometimes I'll write it on the actual panels, and sometimes I'll write it out here. My writing tends to be, um, like I said, pieces of plot and pieces of dialogue. Um, but in this page, as you can see, these are all captions. This is a lot of exposition to get us to where we need to go, which is where we meet the main character, giving this presentation of sea creatures as an oceanographer and answering questions. And then, here you can see there's some dialogue. See, now and any questions, and then now and any questions, and I'll make edits as I go, because if I put stuff here and then I add it in over here, I am actually editing at this step, even though I consider this the first draft. And, I will, if need be, I will take the next step and I will actually type out the script. Like if I was sending the story to someone else, I will type out the script at this point, based on, these pages. It'll be page 1, panel 1, 3 inset panels, and I won't always send these to anybody that I'm working with, because I don't want them to just copy what I'm doing. But on page 3, we introduce the team, the new characters. I try to block out where, the speech bubbles will be, give myself spacing and framing, work on the contrast, the perspective. But it's still very rough. It's still loose to me. And what I do at this point is I'm finishing inking in these figures here, and then we'll take on the next page. Okay, that's the plan. Is we'll take on the next page, and I'll explain as I go. And you can see really what my process is for scripting. To me, this is scripting. Because when I think of a story, I think of the images and the words, and I think of, when I'm incorporating the words, I'm thinking of the design, the bubble placement, because and the balloons. Like, I want you to read these things in a specific order, and I want to show you things specifically. If you were to ask me, like, why did you do this on a page? I may be wrong, but I have an answer. I will always have an answer. And you can see I use this shadow on the curtains to draw the eye in and frame the characters, and I'll end up doing a similar thing over on this side. It'll come up like this. And you can see it'll create a continuous line that as you read left to right, it should help direct the eye. And this is just a Flair pen. You just fill it in. Hey Desiree, how you doing? And for this particular story, I like undersea stuff. So this is these are meant to be like the goody wanting to save the world, the good guys, as it were. And I'm very much using cartoon language. World Cup, hitting the World Cup. Yeah, there was a time when I would watch the World Cup games. When I was younger, sometimes I would go into the city and watch it at a pub or something. But too old for that now. But hey, the U.S. making it to the knockout round. That's a big step up. Huge step up. You got to do what you got to do. If you're a fan, you gotta go for it. You never know with the U.S. soccer when the next time they'll be in a position to do that again. All right. And when I'm doing these types of drawings, I'm really thinking simply geometrically. I want the pieces to fit together. I'm really thinking about those art dummies, that you see on the table where it's just the shapes. And I'm trying to get them in perspective. My vanishing point here is over here, and our horizon line is basically at their knees. And the reason I want the horizon line a little lower is so that they look taller. They look more heroic looking. Hey, Jonathan. Yeah, I'm sure a few shingles went flying off, but if there are any left, that's the real question. I don't know if there are any left. And some of this design work I'll do on the fly, but others I will, I'm getting the idea down, so I want to rough it out. And, I wanted this person to look uncomfortable, so like crossed legs and shoulders up and like doing the like nervous laugh kind of a deal. Because she's the new character of the group. She's got like a sweater on, kind of like a baggy sweater. And she's holding her laptop, which she like always has in the story, and it's like important to the story. I know sometimes that you can like really date a story with using technology like that, but I actually think that like something general like a mobile computer is not going to be looked at in 15 years as like a crazy outdated idea. It's not going to be electric tennis shoes or something. Maybe everybody will be just using phones or tablets or whatever, but the idea of a mobile information device will not be an alien concept. And it's really just like taking a rough draft on everything. Sometimes my design sense is a little dated, so I'll have to get reference for some modern clothes and shoes and things like that. And one of the silly things on this is that for this press conference, they're wearing like the knit caps, kind of like the Cousteau Society. But they make fun of them on the page we'll be working on next. Everything okay on your end? Did you were you able to walk the puppy even in the wind? I just keep adding and noodling, but I'm not worried about making mistakes at this point. There's no mistake here because we can throw it all out. It's just on 8.5 by 11 copy paper, and we can move things. We can, I have a story I finished earlier this week where this is meant to be like a horror story that you'd see in a black and white comic, like a 70s anthology. And I even do like an old-fashioned paste up where I just cut and paste a new panel and put it right on top there. You can see, because I changed the shot on the fly. And when I scan it in, it won't make any. Nobody will know, especially because it's on the rough. It's tough to see sometimes the pencil with all the light I have to have in order for you to see what's going on. But yeah, I mean, I was either going to work. The reason I was going to work on my giant Helena spread, but I couldn't fit the 2-page spread that I'm working on the desk where you'd be able to see it. So it's one of the reasons I just went into one of the other things that I was working on. But I can show it to you. I can show you the progress. Yeah, I mean, it'll be a doozy when it's done. Showed it off some last week. Short walks when it rains. Yeah, I understand. But yeah. And I always loved anthologies. So, like, if I can do enough to put out a handful of those at some point down the line with the stories I finish, then all the better. And what I will do is I will use these lettering bits as a guide when I scan it in and when I do the penciled pages. And I'll be able to just drop it in and hand letter on my computer with the Wacom tablet. And some of the characters are loosely based on, in this case, famous oceanographers and marine biologists. Because there was a time when I was going down that path for a career instead of art. So. I used to do tiny little roughs, but I found that those were actually causing me more fits than anything because I'd see these little tiny pictures and they would have a ton of energy, but I wouldn't be able to do anything with them because, in all honesty, like when the drawing gets too small, I can't see necessarily the decisions I need to make in order to draw things correctly. And as you can see, I'm not going crazy. I'm just trying to like show enough so that when I go to do the final page that I don't get lost. It's not a beautiful drawing by any means, but it does show the story. Like he's gesturing to show these people. There's a television behind him. You can still see that they're on stage, and I will probably add, no, I probably won't because I actually kind of like the idea of this just being flat white with the shadow on them. I have no idea if these things will be black and white. I have no idea if I'll put them in color, but That's not the point. The point is to get the pages and the stories done and have them be good. And I'm following the advice I give other people. Like I'm not out here telling people to do things that I wouldn't do myself. One of the questions that I get asked the most often is like, what do you advise someone do that wants to make comic books? And that's to start off small. Too many projects, too many stories are unnecessarily long. You can tell a darn good story in 10 pages, you know, um, anywhere from 8 to 10 pages. You should be able to tell a complete story because you can get 3 acts. 10 pages is three-page acts plus a splash page, or, if you want to have a character page. But being aware of those limitations and trying to do more with them is really, really important. It's also just a matter of getting it done. You know, as much as we all want to do, the 300-page graphic novel, I certainly don't have the ability to just park it and not put out work. You know, it's just really simple stuff like, as we know, like in perspective, this is further away, so that that short's a little shorter. But these are the good guys, so we want them to look nice and we want them to look heroic. And that's the idea. They're at a press conference, they're probably trying to raise money for their research. Trying to save the world, man. Give everybody nice hair, nice haircuts. But yeah, I'm actually like a big fan of anthologies. So like, whether it's the old eerie magazines, old epic comics. Or like the Charlton books, Anthologies were always something that have been on the shelf, and I've always enjoyed them because I don't need a long, sweeping epic of character story over and over again. Like in here, this is a great example of like an early monster story based on like cybernetics, like 1977, doing like a cyberpunk monster, and all in this page. Like you establish these are people who work together, they're working on something important, something goes awry, and then your electronic man puts on a trench coat and then is terrorizing the people of the city. I think it's a very logical and direct storytelling, much like something Milton, I think, would put out. That's a joke. That is a joke. But yeah, and that's 8 pages, and it's a tremendous story drawn by Tom Sutton, whose work I like more and more, like every day. Guy was just fearless. Textures, storytelling, ideas, concepts. Guy was fearless. Loved his work. He's not as finished or polished as your other Marvel, DC artists of the day, and especially when he was working on eerie and creepy and stuff, he would really put in the grit, I would call it. And then there's the same trick. It's so nice you use it twice. Just having the one short leg a little shorter than the other as you go further into the background. I don't know if anyone else follows some of the undersea stuff on like Twitter and Twitch and stuff, but like the Mbari or the even the Monterey Bay Aquarium, they have some really cool stuff. I wanted to give this guy a striped shirt solely to reinforce the perspective. So like our vanishing point's over here, so the stripes are gonna slowly taper from an angle more and more horizontal. It's not gonna go horizontal because it's above the horizon line, but it's a way of putting something in your picture that establishes the perspective. Like if we wanted to, we could establish it even further by having like boards that get thicker and thicker and wider as it goes this way, or the classic like tile flooring. And in all honesty, like this is and then I'll just use the uh, brush pen just to fill in the black areas. And then you can look at it and you can turn it upside down or look at it in any way to see if you need to add more shadow, less shadow. There will probably be a texture on here of some kind. And you see it again up here. And that gives you overall like the flow of the page, top to bottom, left to right reading. You have a sound effect that serves as a background element instead of a foreground element, so it's not like as in your face. I love the floating head gimmick in comics. Some people hate it, but I love it, especially if you're introducing people. It's just a great graphical approach. And even with talking head panels, like the two at the bottom, I try to vary the shot. And in the case of this speech bubble, like the balloon, the character is saying something that will, obviously have an effect later on, and I want to emphasize it. So you bring it in real tight for a serious, it could save us all. Good evening. And when I go to my next page, which is the one we'll start here, I'm keeping in mind that we ended on a tight shot, and I generally like to vary my shots. So if I go from a tight shot, I want to go to either a wide or a medium shot, depending on how I want the motion to go. And in this case, I've already taken some notes because I was just a bit nervous coming in. So on page 4, we've shown them leaving. On page 3, we've shown them leaving the press conference. So on page 4, we want to show them on a marine going to the undersea base. Okay. And the other thing that I wanted to make sure that I established was that the research assistant, the young lady, has a talk with Jean, the main guy. I'm not sure at what point, but and this is all stemming from expanding on that initial layout for the entire story that's right here. They reach the sub base. I want to see the interior. And then maybe the other lady and the research assistant bump into each other. They just like have that an awkward entrance to the base. And then Jean and the assistant can have a character establishing exchange. Because we want to know, we don't have a lot of pages, so we have to use everything that we can as early as possible to establish everything. And every line, every word matters. There's no throwaway panels in a 10-page story. And to me, I thought it would be fun because like they have the hats on from like the Cousteau Society, or they even joke about it in Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. I want to have a panoramic shot. I think panoramic shots are overused a lot, but I do think they're effective establishing shots. It's a lot tougher to establish with a vertical panel, I find. Um, I do love those tall vertical panels though, and there are different ways to use them. Break it up into thirds. Now, what do we want to focus on? Do we want to? I want to focus on the sub base, the undersea base, and then I want to show the little submarine that's lights heading towards us. Right now, what I'm doing is layering, because what I want is whenever possible, I think the ocean needs to look as big as we can make it. And I also want to show that there's always creatures. There's just creatures everywhere, because part of the opening monologue is about the diversity of the ocean, the biodiversity, and the creatures that live there. So, and I don't know if anyone has ever gone diving. That's in the chat. A couple of my buddies are divers, but sea creatures very quickly reclaim anything that's put into the ocean. Now, I definitely need to come up with a better design for my undersea base. Right now, I'm just using geometric shapes. And it's going to do the job for the purposes of this layout, but it's not going to be as dynamic as I need it to be. It's got kind of a Ralph McQuarrie, just using shapes and layering them, and then we will add our light source. I don't know if anyone's ever seen like the deep sea subs from, even if you've just seen the movie The Abyss with the big bubble front. Little mechanical arms. And then I had an exchange I came up with, which is 1, 2, 3 speech bubbles. I actually think this sub might even be too big, but for the purposes of it, and we use the light to direct us towards looking at the base. And then on this foreground piece right here and right here, I want to show the ocean creatures taking it back. So what I want to do is have the closest elements here, just have some like muscles, when they grow on things. And then maybe some seaweed coming up. Do the same thing over here, show muscles growing on it. Because what that also does is it shows age. You're adding storytelling to it. You're putting more information into it. That's what I try to do. This is not a new base. This has been here for a while. They've been working for a while. We're establishing that there's been more time here than we are even aware of. So, do our lettering. And I try to stick to some of the rules, like you don't want any, single lines, single words, hangers. And here, I'm even revising the dialogue from here to here, and I just wrote this. And I'll probably rewrite it again because I want it to be tighter. You don't want to have that sensation that everyone knows what everyone else is going to say before they say it, but I want to have it feel natural and concise and not overly thought out all the time, where it seems like the character is overthinking. Each character has their motivation, they have their job, and they would all react differently. In a short story, it's really easy for each piece of dialogue to also be like plot point, plot point, plot point, and it's all from the author's voice. They don't have individual characters. And one of the little like shorthand, and again, like I don't think I'm, the greatest writer ever, but like I decided that the main character, he is French, and every now and again he uses French colloquial sayings. And anytime you see that in a speech bubble, even though we can't see who this is, we know that it's him talking. Because so far he's used a couple, like, and he's talked, basically for the first 2 pages, it's him talking. So and this very well may need a caption just stating where it is. Like, I think that the best place for it, I mean, I know upper left is traditionally, yeah. I mean, it's probably going to have to be. Uh, I don't have a name for it. I have a name for the group. So, what I basically would have said was like, this is the Everest group, and it's just the Everest sea base. And that's something where consider, and I'll just write myself notes. New name for base. And I'll just now, one of the major reasons that I do it this way, and I have the speech bubbles and I have everything, is that when I have the draft done, I can read it as a comic book instead of a script, instead of layouts. It is a comic book when it's done. It's a really rough one, but I can judge the pacing, I can judge the page turns, I can judge everything about it far more clearly than if I'm conceptually like looking at it, on paper or whatever in my brain. And it's just a little exchange like, did we have to wear the stupid hats? It's in the contracts. Man, I need a new lawyer. And it's not, it's dialogue that's there for now, and you know, it gets the idea across, and I'll probably revise it. I'm sure there are better writers, that will see this and be like, "That's not how you write. That's terrible." But I find that this works for making a better comic book for me than writing a full script. And it should be noted that other writers that actually work like this are folks like Alan Moore, Grant Morrison, Neil Gaiman, Jeff Parker, um, just writers who are much better than I do use a similar system of drawing the comic books. Harvey Picard did stick figures. So actually drawing out the whole comic book and seeing it and editing it from there can be very good for what we need to do. Now I want to reinforce, what I would like to do is reinforce the depth. And this is where I'm questioning whether or not I'm going to be doing color or black and white comic books. Because for this story would be great in two colors. Like if I could do a navy blue, like a C3M2, or a CM2, which is like the color codes for the old super dark blue in old comic books. Some people actually do their finished comics this way. They will actually just go straight to drawing on the boards from plot. Eric Larson comes to mind with Savage Dragon. But let's be honest here, he's been doing it for so long and he knows those characters so well that like practically lives with them. And I'm sure I'll redo the design of the sub so it's more nifty looking. But you're only going to see it in maybe 2 panels. Okay, well now you at least see where the start of it is going, and we show them. I would like to have some sort of panel that shows part of the sub attached. Got a wide shot. I think it's time we need some full figures coming out of a medium shot. Eye is going to go from here to here. So we probably need something that brings us back over here. I don't know if it's going to be a large panel like that. It probably needs to be because we're basically going from one establishing shot to another. I would love to have like a window in front of a door. Okay. So that you can see the submarine through here. And like see it through the window. It's like window on both sides. And here's like a rough of, this is our horizon line. Here's a rough from one of our vanishing points. So you see I put a really rough grid at the lower half of this panel to establish the plane on which everybody's standing. And we want to put some cuts into that. We want to put all sorts of stuff to make it more dynamic. We need some foreground elements. We want to show people like this is the door. I want to establish a different shape for the doors because we're going to need to be able to tell the doors without seeing much later in the story. We're going to need to be able to recognize the doors, so they need to have a unique shape. We need to establish scale. And if someone is writing in this sub, if you know anything about subs, those little one-man subs, that's about how tall they are in the sub. So and the thing about submarines is you don't have to worry about the doors being like the same height as they would be on dry land. If you've ever been on a submarine, they have shorter doors. We got one person standing here, probably like got his hand up on the door, trying to make sure he's not going to hit his head. So we'll change the pose a little bit. We'll make him leaning. We'll put a step in. Okay, let's put the edge. That's our vanishing point. That's our next wall. It's going to go straight across. Always going back to that vanishing point. And we're going to tighten up our perspective when we get into actually drawing these things. So we're actually going to need to have multiple steps, and then we're going to have to establish a lower plane. Because otherwise, because of this shot that we've chosen, if we don't have steps down, probably need a few steps down, probably 3 steps, maybe even 4. People are going to be gigantic. So from there, just kind of eyeballing about how much taller they'd be as they step forward. And because we have one head here and it's a little lower, we can actually have one of the crewmen that's already on there, who I had meant to add earlier, but I did not. So we might not get as far, because we have 2 establishing shots, we might not get as far as we need to on this. We might actually have to take our second establishing shot and then go, might only have the bump. So we want to show, this will be the research assistant. This will be the person that we want bumping into them a little further back, taking their first step onto that platform. Maybe Jean, I don't think we can have Jean here because we need a speech bubble there. Speech balloon. I know. Can have one here. Gotta have the full figures. We have to establish our vanishing points. Leg will be down like that. And there's a foreground leg that's a little closer. And see that it's something that, you know, most people won't notice when you do the page turn. But I want, like I said, part of that submarine showing here through a window. And windows in undersea research facilities are a luxury because they're so expensive and hard to make because of the pressure. So we got that. We can have our first speech bubble. That's being cut off. So here, we're using this guy's head as a bump. And then we're probably going to have the light coming. That's what we'll do. Our light source will be here. And we have I think what we need to have then shot like this, and we have established the character here. Just like when you accidentally bump somebody with your shoulder and you're walking in like a crowded area. That would be an easy thing to do. Now, 3-panel progressions are a very classic comic tool. Going back to like Bernie Krigstein, who's a big influence of mine on EC Comics. I see we're at like a medium shot. And I'm not going for like a Sal Buscema fall. I just want a little stumble because we've got the stairs here. Go for a wider panel. I think what we want is we want everything to be pointing here. We'll show that this person has stopped walking. And then this person falls. And then on the next page, what we know is we need to have, I want to show Kovalev walks off without worry. It's like a passive sorry. And then Jean picks up assistant stuff and genuinely helps. So the idea being that we go from the fall to the character moment. And there's an action, there's a reaction, and then there's someone there to actually help. And I know that my handwriting isn't great, but you'll see it as I'm actually lettering this stuff in. Research assistant sees the sub base for the first time and it's just like, wow. this is how I do it. I mean, rather than making pinups and sketch covers and stuff, like this is the nitty gritty. You know, it takes me doing this to get to. Let's try to work out a good falling pose. Draw a little bigger. It has to be past the point of balance. See if we can fit this in here. I actually think going from close-up here might be a good idea. We haven't had a tight close-up. So I'm going to revise what I was doing and just show the edge of the step and her foot losing its grip. You can even show both feet. And then as we show that, we've got our close-up. I mean, you can go even closer, but I think that's as tight as I'd want to go. And then I don't even think you see this character's face. That would be another way to reinforce the distance. Not only just the physical distance, but the visual, like you don't see your face, this character's face here, and you don't see it here. You've seen it earlier, but you won't see it again until later. Because I want one part of the story that's coming up for people to think that it's that character and not know for sure. And in this case, since we showed the falling with a close-up, I actually want to show the landing. And show that it's not like she's breaking her neck. It's not like a character doing backflips onto like a steel grate, but it's a stumble. Generally showing a person reaching. Something like that. And then we can show like her papers flying. That's where we'll get some of our extra energy and our perspective. Like that. I can sense people pulling away. And it's not all drawing pinups. This is the hardcore story development, you know, and it's based on, I did a little bit of research, and some of it's based on stuff that I just knew from my time in working with Mariah Mitchell, and I did a little help with the Woods Hole group. Like I said, this is just a flare. You know, this is the rookie who's like never seen the undersea base. So just a wow, like an exposition, I think would be a good establisher, you know, wide-eyed I mean, she's the everyman. She's the one that is taking us into this world and reacting how I think, a person who obviously, has some expertise in the field, but like how under the circumstances that will present themselves might react. And went with a 3-panel progression because I love them. I think they're one of the most effective tools in a cartoonist's toolbox. And when you get good at those, you can pretty much do anything because this is a 3-act story within this story. Here's the bump, here's the fall, here's the and the end, the result. I don't try to do crazy structural weavings of, beyond comprehension stories. I follow, like, I did get an English degree, so I do follow just your classic 3-act structure most of the time. And I do take a few, cut a promo on some of the stuff I remember from my days working with the research folks. Now here's a character that's going to fill up this chunk of this panel. I have no idea what he looks like. I know I can feel what I want him to exude. I want him to be the gritty, realistic problem solver, like who physically fixes things. So this is a person who's got like calluses on his hands, has seen, a lot of work, probably has been one of the engineers. Like, he's basically got to be our Montgomery Scott. So let's think about it that way. Heck, I mean, we could even make him a Scottish engineer if we wanted to. Why not? Let's do that. Let's give him a mustache. Why not? Solid mustache. Maybe he's had his nose broken. Let's show that. Not going to go so far as to give him an eye patch or anything. And let's not have him be, overly fit. Let's have him have, a little extra padding. Exactly. He's got blisters on his fingers. He's the guy that fixes things when they get broke. I think we have like 3 characters with glasses, but I don't know. I feel like he should be wearing glasses. Maybe he needs glasses but doesn't wear them. Maybe that's the trick. No, we only have 1 character with glasses. Let's give him like old school black long rims. Basic, but they get the job done. And let's show his hands. Like, now that we have established that as part of his storytelling, let's show his hands. Let's have him holding a tool. That is the writer of the tick. I will just text him real quick. All right. I will let Jeff know you said hello. Let's just go in. I'm thinking like the old, like 1960s. All right. I have a phone call with him that I need to finish this stream by 9:30 to jump on. So hopefully we can get this done. If not, I will not be posting this finished prelim. I don't post the prelims to a story I'm still working on. So, but I will most assuredly have it on my website, the finished thing eventually. Let's give him some sideburns. I don't know why, but I like the idea of sideburns. We have part in his hair. He's got kind of a little heavier Jim Gordon thing going for him. Don't want to show the whole jawline because that would mean that he's like, he's in shape. I want him to be just a little doughier. Let's give him some white temples, maybe. Give him the Mr. Fantastic temples. And then maybe like gray on top, like salt and pepper. Yeah, I think that'll work. All right, well, now we can start really filling it in. Okay, because it's really about having the spaces. Remember I told you we were going to use the light top here. Remember, this is like muscles. Let's have a little snail. Little snail. But we want to make sure that you can see that it is part of the base. And this I'm just riffing. I can easily redesign all of this, when we get to a certain point, when we get to actually working on the pages. But what I need to do is I need to show the space that whatever this thing looks like occupies and give it some depth and dimension to show some deep space. A real good shorthanded trick, using cartoon language for like deep space in underwater is just having like a darker blue. Maybe there's like a little eel that lives over here. And those are just shorthand to tell me that there needs to be like a whole bunch of muscles there. And we have our light source right here. So, we can just really rough in some shadows, some easy shadows that are reacting to that light. Here's like our docking bay, as they would call it on like Star Trek. The airlock, that's the word. I know very few artists that have taken this level of showing you the nuts and bolts of where a story genesis comes from. And I know that if I were to see this from another creator that I like, I would find it fascinating. It might be boring to the passerby, but I can tell you that in a few years, I will look back and watch this video myself, and I'll be able to see how different my approach is. Because I'm not worrying about style, I'm not worrying about anything. Part of the storytelling, the writing, I'm not describing, I'm making decisions. They're not final decisions, but I'm not describing like, oh, this sweeping undersea base with creatures living all over it and using all this language. No, I'm putting it in picture form because it may not work. And I'm going to find out a lot quicker and be able to make adjustments to get the story where it needs to go. But now when I fill this part in, which is going to be like the dark water, you're going to be able to see the light and how all that works as a storytelling device. You can add air bubbles, bubbling up or whatever to show that it's lived in or whatever. You can use all kinds of different little shorthand bits, but you can see where it's going. Like you can see where the story's going. We need a good Scottish name. Let's look it up here. It's the beauty of popular Scottish boy names. Cameron, Logan, Robert, Malcolm, Scott. Gregor, perfect. That's a good name. Like that. I actually wrote down Gregory, but let's just call it Gregor. Let's write that next to the picture. And just to reinforce what I said earlier, like when he uses a French word, I have him use another one here and it identifies him. Like that's actually Jean right here. You will see him, French word, him talking. Agnes Montgomery. And what I have Gregor saying here is Jean, late as usual. And it has to do with saying that this guy is on top of things. Like he is a man on a schedule. He fixes stuff. Like this is a guy you want in charge of fixing things. Now, just like on a regular page, what I will do is I will take my regular pencil and go over the blue. There's our guy. Here's our vanishing point. So we're actually going to use his glasses to point right at that vanishing point, right there, top of his glasses. He's got he's got a busted nose. Eyes are back here. And he's saying it smiling. So that's like even more storytelling. So he's saying it in jest. He's not saying, he's not being insulting. It gives a familial tone to the whole thing. Like these people clearly know each other. Okay, he's like a heavier guy. There's his shoulder. Like I said, we want to show him holding something so you can see like his strong, like worn hands. mustache. Just for the sake of shorthand, I'm just going to draw a wrench. And I'm just going to put him in a jumpsuit. And I'll even have more tools in his pocket so you can see, like, it just hits you over the head with it. Because I don't know which things people are going to notice. I never know for sure if everyone's going to pick up everything from every image. So I have to throw in extra stuff all over the place in order to get the point home. Or I have to be very, very precise. And I have to say, you either have to say it or you have to show it somehow. I mean, heck, if you want to be even more on the nose, you could just write engineer. And that's the beauty of comics. Sticking with our vanishing point. It's very rarely can you use a vanishing point on such a direct way without it being like forced or too obvious. And when is this story going to come out? I don't know. It will, though, because I have big plans for putting out a lot of stuff next year. The story would be great for like a Halloween anthology or who knows, Inktober. Maybe if I finish something in advance, I'll actually get to a point where I can do Inktober. Because I do not believe that people do those drawings the day, the week, the month of the show, of the Inktober. And some people I've heard don't. Like they will do their stuff, months out or whatever, and try to use the hashtag to get some eyeballs. There we go. And our light source, like we said, is actually going to be up here to help direct the story. So light is going to be coming this way, something like that. Yeah, there's going to be a shadow over here. Okay. And this is everyone coming to the base. So simple storytelling stuff like they're carrying overnight bags, like they're carrying their luggage. And again, just following our vanishing point for a little staircase. there's our stairs. Just real easy, real simple. Light source up over here, so the forward-facing steps will be blacked out. And if our light is coming down this way, what I'm going to do is actually just have a spotlight. Why not? I'm going to switch pens to just a fine liner. We're going to finish this panel, and that'll probably be it for this evening. Like I said, I got to jump on that phone call. And, whether it's my own stuff or the tick or anything else, this is how, when I'm asked to do writing and drawing, or even if I get a script, and I'm taking it to thumbnail, I'll plot out where the speech balloons go and the caption boxes and everything. Okay, and here's our vanishing point, and we can line our shoulders up with the vanishing point. Just giving myself some visual anchors. And here's his bag. And just get a bag that has, some weight to it, but isn't square. Because if you draw a square bag and it's not perfect, it sticks out like a sore thumb. The cat has busted into my office. And we can see, all of in the case of an undersea, base, what we can do is we can create a great way to show our perspective is with a metal floor, like a wrought iron screen floor. And this is just always coming back to that vanishing point. We talked a little bit about perspective last week. And this is putting into action. No, he cannot be denied. No, he's doing something he shouldn't be. What are you doing, Penny? Hey, get out of there. What are you doing? Huh? He was getting into my wastebasket. He's probably hungry. But it's not dinner time yet, so here we are. All right. And we're going to have to add all kinds of like Wally Wood-esque sci-fi tech, all over the place. But now this is not where I would do that. We are just getting the storytelling down at this point. And what I want to do to make it, all the more obvious, and again, simplifying using cartooning language. You can see our spotlight is what's showing off the grid on the floor. And we'll just black out everything else around it. And it'll still read as stairs. It'll still read how you want it to read. There's a cast shadow from where he's standing. Cats decide their own dinner time. That is true. All right. Now we established that door shape I was telling you about. I want to add the roof. And what I want is something else that shows our perspective. So I'm going to have just a simple pipe. Come down like that. One like that. Always following our light source. Remember I said we wanted to establish a shape on the doors. And I think I think it'll be pretty obvious if all the doors are shaped like this. That later on in the story, what I can do is I can just have a silhouette. Like if you see later on in the story, something like this, and that's all that's in the panel, like even if you just had a person, you know what that is. Like and then you have like a giant cast shadow. You can use this shape over and over again as part of the visual language that you've established, and you're creating the internal logic of the story. And I'll just add some like bolts and stuff on the. Okay, there's this side. Now, in order to have windows, like I said, they have to be very, very deep. So here's our vanishing point, and then that's probably a good guesstimation as to how deep the windows have to be. That scene in Star Trek 4 when he's asking how big the aluminum has to be in order to hold a certain amount of water. Well, these windows have to hold back the entire ocean. Okay, just a little bit like that. And for a very distant character that's going to run into our unsuspecting research assistant, we can just have a silhouette. Here's the submarine in the background. And then over on this side, we'll see part of the back of the submarine. So, as I'm designing it, later on, I can think of how I'm going to be using it here to think of like, oh, what's a unique thing I can put right here that's an identifier? Like maybe there's a number, maybe we could put a number 4, right there, like a number on the sub or something. Like I said, using our light source, and if we're going to have a spotlight that comes from over here, it's actually going to probably go something like this. And then we'll have the rest of it like this. So like everything that's behind this, like outside of this line that's not glass or the ocean, we'll need a screen to show that it is a secondary tone. So what that's actually going to do is it's going to save me a lot of time drawing less, I'm going to be able to get away with drawing less Wollywood tech, you know, in the background on this scene. We're going to have to establish it later, but on this scene, we're going to be able to fudge it a little bit. Now let's get our other character who's, like I said, let's have them leaning so they don't bump their head. She's got long hair. 1 foot forward, vanishing points there. So you're going to be able to see the bottom of her foot. You have to show more of the floor here. Otherwise, there's not going to be a floor. She's kind of small. And she always, let's have her putting her hand up to, like I said, to brace herself coming in. And she's got her research in front of her, just like we established earlier. Right here, she's always holding the computer. We'll put a few sheets of paper in there too. And that's me going back, trying to keep the consistency in the storytelling. And then we'll have her with a shoulder bag. And that will be what really like tips her over when she gets bumped into. And there you go. That's 2 panels, and we've already got the other ones, you know, laid out. And this one will take some time, and this one will probably take a little time with the 2 figures. But that really, I think it really shows how I write a story, you know. And when we're done, we're going to be able to just flip through it and actually make the comic book. So this is a facing page. Facing page. This is a spread, and then this will be this way. So you can actually flip through the book, the story, as though it was a comic book. And then we flip again. And there's the page that we just started tonight. So you can really see it come to life. And that's what my process really is. So thank you, Desiree. And your package will be in the mail this week. I'll shoot you some tracking digits for you, and I hope everybody has a good night, and thanks for hanging out with me. This will be a fun one to look back on, to see how this changes over time, how I do this work. And you know, I know there's faster ways to do things, I know there's different ways to do things, but this is just how I do things. And it's worked for me, and it's worked for other people, and people have told me about how to do this. So I hope everyone has a good night, and I will see you next Wednesday. Bye, everybody.